Yeah, I know it kind of sounds like some people who may be listening, it may sound like we're un-American, like we're commies or something, but that's not true. Our government are commies. They're Bolsheviks. And you don't need to look any further than the Communist Manifesto. You don't need to look any further than the policies implemented the last 10 years, or the last 30 years, the last 100 years. And as I said, if it looks like a Zionist and it smells like a Zionist, it is a central banker. And central banks have caused every boom, every bust. They fund both sides of every war. And so we're not un-American. And I say God bless Americans.
All right, welcome to Against the Wall, Sunday. God bless Americans. We don't need to hyphenate ourselves. Welcome to the show today, this afternoon. Great show with Ron just before. Up next after me, Behind the Woodshed with Hal Anthony, one of my favorite shows. Today I have a woman that I met at Freedom Palooza. You guys saw her on the live stream, and I'm sure as soon as the HD videos are available, you'll check her out in HD. Janice Barcelo, all right, and what she was talking about at Freedom Palooza was her book Birth Trauma and the Dark Side of Modern Medicine. But and the subjects covered in this book are amazing, and she's right up she's our cup of tea. So welcome to Janice Barcelo. Janice.
Thank you, James. So glad to be here talking with you and all your listeners. It's exciting to get the information out.
So before the show, obviously, we probably could have just sat there and talked for like 3 hours if we wanted to. And we decided, I guess we'll just start. First of all, what I want you to do is just spend a couple of seconds talking about some of your, the direction of your research so people understand where you're coming from. And then we'll just go right into Planned Parenthood and just everything can shoot off from there because it's all satanic. It's all Luciferians. It's all, full of filthy Jew parasitical systems, so we'll just go from there.
Okay, so for your listeners, I'll let them know that my background includes experiences of extreme birth trauma, and I don't have any living children, and 2 of my children were tortured by the medical system. It was those experiences that really set me on the road to understanding the impact of birth trauma on our children, on ourselves, on our relationships. Families break down because of it, and actually on our entire civilization. And as I was researching, methods of healing birth trauma, the impact of birth trauma, it took me into the information about trauma-based mind control, which is something that our government has been up to since at least the 1940s.
Right, and that's kind of why. I'm sorry. I'll just cut in just for 2 seconds, and that's where what I heard you talking about that piqued my interest because I spent a lot of time in the juvenile system. I saw a lot of poor children that were exploited and that disappeared, and I had a few things happen to me. And then further on, my research went to Columbine and the 2 boys that had been raped by the sheriff there, and some of this other satanic rape going on at the highest levels. And the fact that most child rape victims aren't transported around in vans and pickup trucks and on trains. They are transported by Learjet and limousines. Anyway, it's just I apologize for interrupting you. I have a horrible habit of doing that.
Well, it's an important thing for people to understand the foster care system and the adoption system are part of a satanic network where it's human trafficking, the trafficking of children, and if people make it through that system without being sexually violated, that would actually be a miracle because there's so much evil.
I was a runaway.
Yeah.
That's how I made it through without that happening because I would fight and I ran. I just didn't want to be around.
Yeah, smart kids, James. Smart kids. Well, in any event, what I was saying was, when I started researching trauma-based mind control, I could see very clearly that the techniques that they were using to create alter personalities in people were the same exact techniques that they were using on infants, as infants were entering this dimension through hospital birth. I mean, point for point, every single thing that they're doing to babies is a form of trauma-based mind control.
From conception. I mean, really, almost from the minute that you conceived your child.
Actually, the truth is, conception is part of the programming, because there's a huge manipulation of human sexuality that's been happening on our planet since, again, at least since the 1940s. People like, what the hell's that guy's name? Alfred Kinsey, who did these so-called studies, about human sexuality. He was funded by the Rockefeller Foundation, and part of his research, quote unquote, involved masturbating infants. So he would take an infant and rape this infant repeatedly for 24 hours straight to see how many orgasms he could trigger in the child. And his description of orgasm included the baby screaming and crying, kicking, trying to get away from them. This to Alfred Kinsey was the baby having an orgasm. So his research has become extremely famous, and if people look into who he was, not only was he a pedophile, he was incredibly insane. I mean, he hung himself from his balls.
He's a sick son of a bitch.
He was extremely insane. And it's his quote-unquote research that was the instigation for the so-called sexual liberation movement in our country. And this movement was designed to get people to begin to separate their sexual energy from love, number one, but also to separate it from the act of creating life. And here is one of the most dangerous things that we're doing, because when we engage this energy, which is in the Creator's design, absolutely life-creating potential. Okay, that's what it's designed for, is to create life. But when we try to separate it from the creation of life, we end up with extreme problems such as abortion, which I want to go into very deeply, this human sacrifice, where women are exchanging a few minutes of fleeting physical gratification in exchange for a child's life. Okay, we also have venereal diseases, sexually transmitted diseases, teenage pregnancies, single parents. Fathers are leaving because they're also being conditioned to have sex in these very vulgar ways.
If it feels good, do it, right?
That's the satanic influence.
Yeah.
Not to have any moral value placed on the meaning of bringing our bodies together, which is one of the most sacred things we could ever do.
Denise, I think it's sick today that that women are led to believe that I'm serious, that having an abortion is an empowering event for a woman, and encourage a woman to do that, to have sex, to be free, to just go out and just be as immoral and decadent as you possibly can be, and then to have abortions. It's disgusting. We're going on 55 million aborted babies in America, and the number rises every year.
And it is part of the satanic agenda to have the aborted babies. The bodies are being used for very, very, very horrific purposes.
Well, that brings us to the Planned Parenthood news that came out last week. Why don't we briefly just mention that and then just keep continuing, because we were going to go there anyways from this, from the way the information goes, because they are sick. I mean, they drink your blood. They take your dead infants and they sell their body parts, and then they turn the rest into vaccines, and it's just like it's almost a complete desecration of creation. It is satanic.
That's exactly what it is.
They hold life in contempt.
what it is it's an attack on the Creator. And if you wanted to do the most direct attack on the Creator, you would attack life and the way that life is being brought forth. Yeah. So this is exactly what it is. This is why we have artificial reproductive technologies as well, because the Luciferian forces are always trying to find the keys to the creation of life. They never will, because they're missing the main ingredient, which is love. That's priority number one. But they want to usurp the creation of life and morph it and destroy it and turn it into filth and degradation, so that children are going to be born in the image of Lucifer instead of in the image of the Creator. And this is happening on a mass scale right now.
Yeah.
So in terms of human sexuality, because most children are conceived as a side effect of fleshy indulgence, right, and many of us are not wanted.
Right, but that's not to say that, that even you're just saying, well, I think what you're saying is there's a big difference. Even if a baby is conceived as an accident and still raised in a loving home with a mother and father, it's different than one that was conceived out of love, that was planned.
It's very, very different. Let me tell you the ideal scenario, okay? The ideal scenario is two people have a very bonded, deep love together. They create a space of love for themselves and for their forthcoming children. In that space, that's where they will conceive and gestate and birth their children, because that space has been created for the purpose of bringing their love into eternity and making sure their children have a place of love in which to exist once they get here. Ideally, this couple has a strong relationship with the real Creator, who is the force of love behind creation. And they have said to the Creator, I want to contribute to the fulfillment of the divine dream. I want to bring in a child that will make a contribution to the fulfillment of love on this planet and to the fulfillment of your agenda, okay, of your plan, Creator, which we know is about love, despite what the Bible is saying. And this is a very tricky thing, because the Bible is promoting a belief in a God that is very violent and angry and hostile and misogynistic warrior. We're going to allow to come through us, so that any child we give birth to will be a child of love and will be able to make a contribution to the fulfillment of love on this planet. So that's a very tall order. Most couples are just basically having sex because they want to get off. Somehow a child gets conceived in that, and many times the child is not wanted. So once you're in a womb where your mother, when she discovers you, says, oh no, now what am I going to do? Should I have an abortion? The damage to the child has already begun, because their imprints will be for something other than love. And that imprinting starts.
I absolutely believe that there are prenatal memories. I mean,
there's no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a huge body of work right now, prenatal psychology, and we could do a whole show just on the things that are happening.
What L. Ron Hubbard based his entire religion on, basically, prenatal memories.
Yeah.
Engrams called them.
Just what's happening in the womb is altering us and damaging us on a huge scale. So that's something we have not paid enough attention to the first 9 months in the womb.
No, and something that that I want you to talk about, because there's an entire process that takes place in a woman's body from the minute that the fetus begins to develop, and that includes the full-term birth with the release of the vitamin K. See, these are things that I really didn't realize. I didn't know anything about, and when I heard, I'll be honest with you. I feel see, that's why I just 5 years in a row. Next year will be the 6th year. I love what I do with Paulie and Poker Face, because I get to meet people, Gary in particular, and you, and also Angela, who I've already spoken to, and I'm going to have her on the show. But I never had given this thought that this process, okay, because people just obviously we live in a society of labels where they just label you an idiot, and then what you say or what you feel doesn't matter. But there's an entire process of birth, and a father, and again, right there, I mean, I cut the umbilical cord when my child was born, but my hands weren't the actual first hands that touched her, and I don't recall whose eyes she first gazed into. But I know that there's that bond was created instantly. The very second I saw her, I was so in love. I've never felt any love like that before in my life.
Yeah, that's called the neurobiology of love, and that is a very physiological experience, because we have chemicals that just flood our system when we make eye contact with
I was laughing and crying at the same time.
Yeah, it's huge.
It was something to me that was, I'm just so glad that I was able to have that gift in my life from the Father or the Creator, whatever. Because I mean, laughing, giggling, and crying at the same time, tears just streaming down. I mean, it was a series of emotions that happened at the same time that I'd never experienced. Only deep, intense emotions I'd ever experienced until then was extreme anguish and pain, you know what I mean, in my life. So that to me was a miracle that changed my life forever after.
Yeah, that's so beautiful, James. I'm really touched by your sharing, and I hope other fathers are listening, because this is so important when I was born, my father was not allowed to be there. He wasn't allowed to be present at my birth. And in fact, he never held me for the first 5 days of my life, because I was trapped in a nursery. All he could do was look at, through a glass window. And so the interruption in bonding is severe and lifelong, because he and I have never been able to bond. And I don't think he's been able to bond with any of his children.
Because evil, satanic, goddamn shit. I'm sorry.
It's an insult to God in the most enormous way. And there's so much pain on our planet because of the interruption in bonding. And so it's beautiful to hear a father, speak the truth of what it feels like when you are able to bond with your baby, because it can keep your family together forever. Okay, it's really important for the stability and endurability of that family, that a father gets to be present and bonding with his children. This is critical, and you have just expressed it so beautifully. So I'm really touched and deeply moved by what you shared. And getting back to the womb experience, I want, you said Ron Herbert. I don't know much about his work, his religion on the importance of this. Let me just give people a brief piece of information about something that can happen in the womb even before discovery. Discovery happens usually around 6 or 8 weeks, when the mother has missed a period. And then she says, I might be pregnant. And then she discovers that she is pregnant. And in many cases, in far too many cases, she is not happy. That baby is not greeted with a welcoming, loving response. And on the contrary, the mother is, horrified and terrified and thinking about killing her baby. So this gets imprinted usually into the baby's lungs, in the lung meridian, because this is what is developing
Yeah,
at that
it's not a fully developed person yet.
Well, the lungs are developing at this period of time. And for those of us that have had smoking addictions, I think I might have mentioned this at Freedom Palooza.
You did.
Yeah, smoking addictions or chronic pneumonia, bronchitis, asthma, any lung issues or smoking addictions may be an indication of discovery shock, meaning we were not resourced enough when we were babies in the womb to deal with the emotional pain of being rejected and unwanted by our mothers. And that memory gets held. And we're not able to deal with it most of the time, and so we suck it back. We suck it down through the smoking, or we develop chronic lung problems because we have heavy grief and heavy feelings of rejection and betrayal and abandonment because of what's happened to us in the womb. Another example, I want people to understand the depth of what is going on in the womb and the lifelong impact that this has on us, okay? Even before discovery, the mother can make her womb very welcoming if she wants to have a baby. This is neurochemically welcoming. Or she can make it extremely toxic and unwelcoming through her emotions. So we have women right now who have cysts and endometriosis and all sorts of things that would make it very difficult for a baby, a newly conceived child, to actually find a place in the womb to nest and to grow its body. And this is called implantation shock. When the fertilized egg tries to find a place in the womb, if the womb is unwelcoming, it can be very hard. It can be neurochemically toxic. There's a lot of different things that could happen. That fertilized egg can have to try several times before it succeeds in implanting in the mother's womb. And each time it misses is like a near-death experience, because if it gets any lower in the womb, it can get washed out and it can die.
And and Janice, we all know that all information is contained quantumly in everything. So the very second that it's there, all the information from there on is immediately present. All information before,
and all the information prior to that baby arriving
also there.
Should also be present. Okay,
yeah.
We're coming in intact. But if we have implantation shock, if we are unable, if we find it very difficult to find a safe place to nest and grow our bodies, this can manifest throughout life in terms of finding it difficult to find a home, to find a place where we can really feel safe and nourished, and where we can grow and expand. So people that have implantation shock, and I am one of these people, have a very hard time finding a home and being able to stabilize a nourishing home until we can heal the implantation shock. So for people that have prenatal or birth trauma, and I'm just scratching the surface of what can happen in the womb, I haven't even touched the birth process yet. Please, there are modalities. I practice a Japanese system called Jinshin Jitsu that really helps for the healing of prenatal and birth trauma. And there is cranial sacral therapy, emotional freedom technique, Watsu therapy. If you need support, please go to my website at birthofanewearth.com. That's birthofanewearth.com, and contact me, and I'll try to get you pointed in the right direction so you can help yourself and your children heal from any prenatal or birth trauma. So we need to pay attention to what's going on in the womb. And once we enter into the satanic system of what they call prenatal care, our babies are in even more danger.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you about. So since you already broached the subject, so go.
ultrasound technology is a weapon. It's a mind control weapon, and it is being used to create infertility.
Right.
So I'm writing a book about this. It's going to be called MK Ultrasound. It's in the works right now. What they're doing is they're using ultrasound as a form of contraception. So if you expose the adult male scrotum to two 15-minute blasts of ultrasound, that man will be infertile for a minimum of 6 months, and the infertility can be permanent. So what do we think is happening to the developing testes and ovaries of a baby that's in the womb when we blast these frequencies at the baby in order to find out the sex, and we're blasting them directly at the baby's genitals? All right. It's also being used, like they've known for 100 years, that ultrasound creates brain damage. So while the brain is forming, neurons that are intended to make their way into the cortex never get there. That means our cortex, the part of our brain that would allow us to regulate our violent impulses and communicate directly with the divine mind, our cortex is not functioning properly. And our reptilian brain, which is the part of our brain that is designed to keep the body alive and that picks up threat after threat after threat because we're living in a satanic reality, that part of our brain is overstimulated and terrified. And once that part of our brain gets activated, if our cortex is not functioning right, our tendency to
So that's what, okay, so let me get this straight. Punching a girl in the stomach or pushing a girl down the stairs who's pregnant is evil, which it is. I'm just saying, because of the damage it can do. And then they do it with an ultrasound. It's the same thing, right? It's an assault that because of there's not a full development, right, already yet of the brain, that only the reptilian part, the instinctual part, the protection, the reason that, you know, you instinctually try to protect yourself is the only thing that's developed.
See the difference between the two activities?
I just wanted to make sure I understood what you said.
The difference between punching a woman and a pregnant woman in the stomach and exposing her to ultrasound is that the man who's punching the woman in the stomach probably has brain damage from what has happened to him in the womb and at birth, and he cannot control his violent impulse.
The ultrasound is a system.
Ultrasound is a weapon.
Yeah,
it is a biological weapon. It is being deliberately used to deliberately create brain damage and infertility.
Okay, so what about some of the injections that a pregnant mother gets that are also an assault on the fetus or the actual?
What they're doing right now is they're encouraging pregnant women to receive vaccinations because they know that the vaccinations will cause neurological damage and miscarriage. They're killing babies. They're deliberately killing babies. This we know without a doubt. If you get the flu shot while you're pregnant, you have a 4,250% increased chance of losing your baby. 4,250% increased chance your baby will not be born alive.
And something that most people just couldn't even fathom is the United States has a very, 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 very high infant mortality rate, higher than some third world nations.
Than many third world nations.
Yeah.
Yes. It also has one of the highest rates of maternal mortality. So women and babies are dying in huge numbers in American hospitals. And this is precisely because of the technological interference in the pregnancy and birth process. Everything that they do, I mean everything, is harmful. All right,
I used to look at a hospital as a place of healing. Now whenever I see a hospital, I just see this big, giant black vortex above it sucking creation and humanity. They're just, I have a hard time. I get really emotional. All my family, every person I've ever loved has died horribly from cancer and treated horribly by the system while they were dying. And I found the cure. and I promote it, and I don't give a shit. I'm not waiting for permission. I can cure your cancer, and then all you have to do is change your lifestyle.
Hospitals are temples of the occult. They are run and funded by the Luciferian Rockefellers. These people are Satanists, and they do not have our best interests at heart. Okay, hospitals are places of death. They are places of disease. They are places of extreme toxicity and extreme trauma. Yes. If we were not so incredibly mind-controlled, we would clearly see that this is not a good place to give birth to our children. But the mind control is deep, and so instead of seeing clearly, we believe what gets parroted in the Luciferian Jew media, and we say, oh yes, hospitals are the safest place to give birth. And there's our mouth flapping. Yes, hospitals are the safest place to give birth. We don't know diddly. We've never even looked at the infant and maternal mortality rates in these hospitals. We've never looked at the C-section rate or the induction rate. We've never bothered to look at how many babies end up in neonatal intensive care units.
Yeah, so let's go back. Let's go back there before we continue on, because we have a half an hour, so there's a whole process of birth that that is being deprived from not only the mother and the father, but the fetus and the child and their entire family. That would include their siblings, because it affects everyone later, eventually.
It affects everyone. If that family, if those parents cannot bond with that child, that family is in danger of breaking down, period. Having a child is the single most important thing that any couple will ever do in terms of the possibility for that union to be lifelong, or the opposite. Okay, if you have a child and experience birth trauma or prenatal trauma, the chances of that marriage staying healthy are minimal, because having a child should be the fulfillment of love between two people. It should be the culmination of love and the way that we bring our love into eternity through the creation of a life. If that is interfered with, if that is undermined, if that is turned into a hellish nightmare, the chances for that relationship to stay stable and loving are very slim. And this is how important the birth of a child is. There's nothing that is more important. And the fact that there is not a single school anywhere on this planet, as far as I know, that talks to young people about the things that I'm talking to you about today, James, is a crime. They're being taught a bunch of nonsensical, meaningless dribble.
Yeah.
And there's no single conversation
just
about
introduced to porn and sex.
That's right.
I mean,
there's no conversation about love. There's no conversation about how to have a healthy relationship, how to conceive and gestate and birth your babies in love. Okay, how to raise children consciously. There's no discussion about that, because see, that's part of the divine plan.
Yeah.
We don't want that. We want the opposite. We want to encourage these kids to have sex. Yep. Get addicted to pornography so that you will not have a chance.
Don't even wait for an abortion. Just get a morning after pill.
Which is just the same as murder anyway.
That's what I say.
Okay? It's murder no matter what you do. If you're on birth control pills, I mean, this is a very deep topic. If you're on birth control pills, it messes up your hormones so bad that you will be attracted to men who you would otherwise be repulsed by. Yeah. You might even be attracted to homosexual men, okay, because your pheromones and the pheromone information is so altered.
You're a kook. We're kooks.
No,
it's all kooky stuff. My kids are just fine. And then, I'm just saying, we live in such a nation of our kids are almost all zombies now. I mean, I don't know how to explain it, but
We live in a nation that's in denial of the pain that we've caused our children.
Yeah, and the generation before always goes on a mass attack
Yes.
on the intellectual capital of the next generation before they go.
Well, I think there's tremendous guilt, so if I'm being attacked by my parents, it's because they're terrified that I'm going to expose what they've done.
Right.
And even though they're unconscious, even though they are mind controlled, it's not their fault per se. It is their fault in the sense that they didn't pull themselves out of the mind control before they had children. Right. And this has really hurt their children. And it's hurt their children's chances of having love in their life.
Well, I mean, now they try to get a kid on drugs as early as possible just to continue to, and it's not any one episode. It's the combination of all this that has caused pretty, I mean, I can only use myself as an example, but I made it through 7th grade and that's it. I was in the system after that. I went from foster care to group homes to state institutions. And and it was Ritalin. They had me on Ritalin, and it's a whole system.
Yeah,
it's a whole system. It's satanic. Your children are not safe in custody. I don't care what you're told. I don't care if you're the biggest, the most bootlickinest, compliant, person. Your kids are not safe in custody. Period.
They're not safe at the schools either, James.
No, they're not. I believe at school they're in custody.
Part of the system. The schools will interfere with the parental rights, number one, insist that the kids be on drugs. They're teaching 5-year-old children now about masturbation and homosexuality.
Fisting and sick, disgusting, perverted things.
Well, you know who's behind it, behind the Common Core curriculum. So that's something that needs to be.
You can say that on at our network. We don't.
These people are pedophiles, and they are
Jews, man. It's the satanic Jews, the crypto Jews.
They're Luciferians, is what they are, and they, But again, I don't want to go deep into the topic of religion. That's for
we won't. We don't have to because we haven't even got to a vitamin K shot yet. You haven't even reached the birth canal yet.
We haven't even gotten to the Planned Parenthood thing about abortion either.
Exactly.
So I'm telling you, James, I've got about 30 hours worth of material. The point is, even what you talked about before, your pride in cutting your daughter's umbilical cord.
I just don't know if I'll ever experience anything like that again in my life, which I don't care. Man, for me it was life-changing, so I'm just so grateful that I was there.
I don't want to bust your bubble, but I do want people to understand this. We know that the Luciferians are drinking and eating blood and body parts of other humans, and we know that they prefer the blood and body parts of children. There is a huge market right now for cord blood, infant cord blood. And in fact, this is exactly why they're clamping and cutting the umbilical cord at birth. And instead of that blood going into your baby where it belongs,
right.
They're harvesting the blood and they're selling it. So one of the companies that was mentioned in the Planned Parenthood video, where this woman was casually chomping on her salad while she was talking about the sale of livers and lungs and other body parts of babies that had just been murdered by her organization. She mentioned a company called STEM Express, which is one of the companies that is selling the body parts and is also selling infant cord blood. I have this up on my blog so that people can see.
But I can still be proud of I didn't know about the umbilical cord thing, but it was more than me. The impact wasn't really about cutting the cord. To me, that was disgusting.
No.
It was holding that purple, slimy, bloody, purple, mucus-covered creation that changed my life.
So
I know anything that you told me now, our babies would have been born at home. Straight up, I would never take, unless my wife was dying and go to a hospital for a childbirth.
Exactly. So let me stress for your listeners that the only time it is safe to cut the umbilical cord is when the cord has turned white and it is flat. That means that your baby has received all of its cord blood, that the blood that contains the baby's oxygen supply, the blood that contains stem cells and vital nutrients necessary for the development of a healthy immune system and nervous system, and that oxygen for proper activation of your baby's lungs. If they steal that cord blood, all right, they're stealing something that's extremely important for the well-being of your baby. And they're also stealing the placenta and selling the placenta. And so in indigenous cultures, fathers have very strict protocols that they follow in order to protect their baby's placenta and afterbirth. And that's because they know if the wrong people get their hands on this material, their baby can be negatively influenced throughout life by evil forces. So we have lost this knowledge, and we have even been encouraged to hand our baby's placenta over to these people as quote-unquote medical waste. And I'm here to tell you they're not throwing it out. They're performing black magic on our baby's body parts to keep our children in service to the Luciferian agenda. And they're doing the same thing with our baby's blood. Okay, the rituals that are being performed and that are now being mainstreamed, where you have even Dr. Mercola putting on his website the benefits of young blood for people who are elderly and want to stay youthful. Okay, we have Satanism mainstreamed in our culture, and hospitals are an integral part of perpetuating the satanic agenda by torturing our children. Do you think it's easy for a baby that's just been born? He or she is not breathing because it's receiving all of its oxygen through the blood that we so rudely cut off? And then we manipulate the fathers and we say, here, Dad, you do the honors.
I know.
You cut your baby off.
Another attack on the Creator.
And then it's an attack on that family.
Yeah. Well, the creation itself.
Yes, it is.
Luckily,
yes, it is.
Luckily, the rest of it was so awesome for me that it didn't. That knowing that they unwittingly made me participate in a satanic ritual, that I was duped, and I'm still redeemable.
You are, my friend, and you know what? You experience love with your baby despite their attacks.
I still love
it. So, ha. That is the power of the Creator's design to override their disgustingness.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I spent half my life with that same system trying to turn me into an animal. So, I mean, even though I am a piece of crap and spent my life as one, you can say what you want, but I'm a success story because I made it through that entire system, and I'm still have love in my heart and empathy and passion.
And you're able to love, James. Yeah. You're able to love your children, and you're able to love. And so they couldn't take what God had originally given you, although they try. They try a million different ways.
And millions of people fall victim, not just... my story's not even unique at all, because there was thousands of other children that were around me in these facilities. Yeah. Just a smorgasbord for these evil SOBs. Really is what these systems are in the juvenile facilities. It's just like... It's like a catalog. It's like when we were little kids and the Sears catalog came right after Thanksgiving, and you just sit there and play with all the toys in your mind as you look through the Sears catalog for months before Christmas. That's what these frickin' juvenile facilities are like to these elite pedophiles and satanic just parasites, really.
So mean-spirited. Oh, my God.
Yeah. That they hold us in such contempt that they would desecrate just the very idea of creation, and desecrate and try right from the very beginning to take your dignity away from you, to an attack on your being itself, a total, absolute, and utter hateful and contemptuous action.
Yeah, the last thing that they want, James, is powerful men.
Right.
That's one thing.
That's one of the things that you were going to talk about, right?
Well, let me just quickly run over this aborted baby thing,
sorry.
okay? Because the aborted baby thing is very intense, because these babies, for example, their bodies are being burned to create electricity for hospitals, at least one hospital in Oregon, and places other places in the world. Their bodies are being turned into powder and consumed as stamina boosting pills. The Israelis are actually taking eggs from aborted baby girls and using them to create IVF children. And they're taking sperm from dead men. So what we have is the Israelis trying to raise people from the dead, which is clearly satanic. And if people understand that the memories that this aborted baby carries will be going into any children that are created from the cells of that aborted baby, we're going to have intensely troubled children from the creation of these. These are abominations against God, that you should ever touch the body of a dead child and destroy it that way and do what you will with its body parts is absolutely an affront to the Creator. It is sickening beyond measure, and Planned Parenthood is heavily, heavily involved in this activity of selling the baby body parts. I'm trying to think. There's other things that are being done with the aborted babies that people should be aware of, and I've written about this in my book.
Yeah, plug your book real quick. I can't believe I left without buying one. I had every single intention of running over there to Gary's table and grabbing one, and just, I just didn't. I'll get one from you, though.
Then life happened. The book is called Birth Trauma and the Dark Side of Modern Medicine. If you go to my website at birthofanewearth.com, you can buy it there directly from me, and that really helps me if you buy it directly from me. But it's also on Amazon, and you can buy it as a Kindle. I recommend having a hard copy because it's hard to read a Kindle book. It's a very long book, and it's very well cited. So that, anyway, that book has a lot of information about what's happening to the bodies of aborted babies. And we know also that they're in vaccines. We know that in the MMR vaccine and the DTaP vaccine, they're using the cells from a baby that would have been born to an insane mother. And so they're injecting cells from the baby of an insane mother into our children. And you got to know that this is a satanic agenda. Okay, the agenda is to make us mentally ill, number one, and to scramble the genetics of the living child by injecting the DNA from another baby, especially a baby whose mother was insane. Okay? They're injecting into babies the DNA from monkey kidneys, pig blood, bovine from cows, bovine fetal serum, guinea pig brains, caterpillar eggs. There's aspartame and MSG and aluminum and mercury and formaldehyde, and the list is just absolutely disgusting and revolting. And here we are, lining up with our children and saying, yeah, stick that stuff into me and my kids. You have to be insane. And then we have never, in all of the history of mankind, had children that are this sick and this neurologically damaged as we do right now.
10 more years, they predict every other baby boy will be autistic.
Look, by the time
that's genetic.
Baby boys are being circumcised, Okay, this is one major difference between the boys and the girls, and I'm going to suggest that this is the trauma, the extreme brain damage caused from the trauma of circumcision, which is done 96% of the time without anesthetic in the United States. All right, between the ultrasound, the Pitocin, the induction, the C-section, the cord clamping, all of the interruption and bonding.
Right.
And then the circumcision, and then you vaccinate them.
We didn't even mention the inducement, but we'll continue with your thought. You're just going to have to come on again.
There's so much to cover in terms of the birth process itself, highlighting the fact that circumcision is a form of satanic ritual torture, is something that needs to be stressed. Infant boys are being strapped to torture boards.
And anybody who hasn't been in a 4-point harness, I have, more than once. And I don't know how to explain it except that if they were cutting skin off me, it would have been even worse. But I do know what it's like to be in a 4-point harness where you can't move. It's
a lot of men,
that alone is almost like torture because you try to move and you can't. That
is torture. And part of why you experienced it again and again is because it happened to you as an infant, James. It's called the recapitulation of trauma. Okay, so we relive the trauma. If we're not able to heal it and get it out of our bodies, chances of us recreating it are very, very high. So it's very important, especially if you have a baby that's experienced birth trauma and you can get your baby healing, you can help your baby not to have to live with years of recreation of that trauma. Trauma is insidious and they know it. This is why, it's trauma-based mind control. They know what it does to us. They know how it affects our ability to create reality. And they know that if we're born in trauma, the chances of us having a happy life are going to be very small because we're going to be recreating the trauma throughout life until we find healing, until somebody comes along and points out, yeah, this is traumatic. Then our body can begin to let go because now the conscious mind is ready to deal with the trauma that has been repressed all these years from the conscious mind. It's held in the reptilian brain. It's held in the system, but it hasn't reached the conscious mind until somebody.
Sometimes you have dreams. Sometimes you'll have dreams, and I have had dreams that were like prenatal memories because I've had them confirmed by my parents talking about about a situation that happened to them while together and pregnant with me that I've had before I had that discussion with them. I had a couple of dreams and so, man,
Yeah, I mean, a lot of circumcised
immediately, I believe.
A lot of circumcised men also suffer from sleep paralysis where they can't move their bodies and they don't really, in their sleep.
Right.
And they don't realize it's a reliving of the circumcision trauma when they were strapped to these torture boards.
I toss and turn in my sleep.
Yeah.
I kick my feet. My legs are restless. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that from? No, I'm just kidding, Janice.
I'll sit down and talk with you about it, but.
Yeah, we got roughly about 5 more minutes here, Janice.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do right now is ask you if you'll come on again.
Oh, definitely.
And thank you for being my friend, even though I sort of wasn't able to. That's why I hung out at the fire a little bit longer this year. Usually, like when we shut the lights off, I'm so wiped out that I just go to bed. But I really wanted to. Because of the fact that I met Gary and what was that other gal's name?
Angela.
No, Audra and Angela. That I really wanted to make it a point to try to get to talk and get to know some of the people that were camping with us.
Yeah, the Freedom Palooza gathering is something that really should be promoted, and have many, many more people attending, because the information being shared there is really important for people to have if they want to free themselves and their children from the tentacles of these evil forces. And the tentacles are extensive and reaching into every aspect of our lives. We have to see that the whole of the technological world is a Luciferian.
Yeah, and they hate
construct.
the very thought of you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They hate the thought of you being proud of your creation. Even they hold you in such contempt.
Yeah, and I think that the Luciferians have contempt because I actually believe that they are made from a different creator. I believe they're made from the creator's nemesis, and they don't have the capacity for love or for eternal life the way that those of us that were created by the creator do.
Right.
And the jealousy, and of course I'm sure it's not easy for them to not be immortal, to not be able to love. That has to be, having a satanic agenda to carry out cannot be easy for any entity that is living. So I'm sure their suffering is immense, as is their hatred of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's not an excuse.
No, it's not.
Not be a virtuous and righteous person. Doesn't matter. Even if you're agnostic, there's no being a good person. You can be good. You can be a creator, not a destroyer. It doesn't matter, and you can change yourself. And I did, and I reap the benefits, and that in part is because of what I'm involved in, and so are you. So that's one of the beautiful things. Paul,
it's a little tricky. It's a little tricky.
80% of the stuff we talk about we'll agree on. So we can always put aside terms and things that we don't agree with to realize that we can all love each other still.
Yeah, we can. We can support each other, and we can support each other to live lives based on the concept of do no harm. And this is very, there's a lot involved in do no harm, even, down to the basics of what we eat. But if we can aspire to do no harm, to not contribute to any part of the program of death, that means no pesticides, no toxins in our home or in our environment, and not hurting animals in any way. These are things that are basic, and yet not easy for people because we've been raised in the Luciferian system, and we have yet to see the many ways that we're contributing to it.
Right. Okay, Janice Barcelo, where can people find your book real quick before our hour ends?
Please, you can find it on Amazon. It's called Birth Trauma and the Dark Side of Modern Medicine. Or you can go to my website at birthofanewearth.com and order it directly through me. I also have a blog, birthofanewearth.blogspot.com. Lots of very good information on my blog as well. So, and a YouTube channel, Birth of a New Earth.
Right.
I'm going to be having my own.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. That's all up next.
We're good people. We're God-fearing people. We're being led.
You there, Janice?
I am here, James.
All right, let me get rid of the network here.
I'd then be a slave to thee. Don't train